Alright, so as we start to complete this model, I have everything pretty much ready to go. What I've done off camera is I've taken and dull coated the acrylic work just to protect it and have it ready for the next step, which is to apply the grime colors of the chalks and powders, which I like to always put on these. It just is another nice little effect. It enhances a lot of things. You can do bearing grease, you can do fresh rust, you can do exhaust soot, all kinds of nice little effects with that. And that's why I'm going to be putting these applications on. I don't go in too much detail with powders unless the prototype demands it. Most of these standard weathering jobs, I just put it on the trucks and grills and stuff like that, the fuel tank, and as you'll see, it's pretty straightforward. I don't go too crazy, but I mean, you can really go in depth with this as much as you want, honestly. And of course, it also depends on how grimy the prototype is, what kind of effects you have. So it's just studying prototype photos, and also really just as far as you want to take it. It's your judgment call there. And again, rely on prototype photos. But in this case, just putting it on the model where it needs to be. And I'm not going too extreme with this. Brushes I'm using my Quite Beat, my battle worn, if you will, chalk brush here. It's pretty worn out, but it still does a good job for the most part. And then I have these older Citadel brushes here. One's for grime, one's for soot. So that way I don't get a concentrated color in them. They are all designated for one particular color. This is an overall, you can use this kind of a brush here for anything, or at least I do. But these are the three I'm going to use. The colors I'm using, powder-wise, I have the AIM Products Chalky White and the Soot Black. These are my favorite colors to use on the trucks, and this is especially good for modeling exhaust. It's completely replaced my older method of putting the grime on by hand with acrylics. I'm using those, and then of course you guys have seen this 1,000 times, but it's my standard grime earth tone chalk color that I've used for years now. I've had this forever. It's from the 80s, this chalk is, and so I try to really go easy on it. I don't want to use it too fast, as I can't find this exact color anymore. I can find stuff that's close, but not the same. So I'm going to try to use this very lightly, but this is my main color coat for the trucks. So, starting with the trucks themselves, I'm going to take a little bit of the powder with my earth tone brush here, this guy, and I always just start with a little bit, just load my bristles up, and I start at the top of the truck, and I start basically working it in. One little bit at a time. I don't pick up too much chalk. I like to be able to control the application. I know some guys like to just smear the powder on there, but not me. I like to be able to really have some control when I'm doing this. I just don't want to waste material either, is the other thing. I'm pretty conservative with my stuff. Like I said, that chalk I use for this is kind of hard to get. I can't find a similar color, so I try to preserve it as much as I can. But I know it might be a little hard to see on this camera, but you can see how almost right away you start getting all those little pops of detail out of this. So you get that nice little effect of fresh rust, which is always what these trucks are coated in, is fresh rust over that older grime. So you can apply this kind of randomly, or you can apply it really all over the things. It just depends again on your prototype. So refer to your photos when doing this kind of thing again. But I'm just putting it at the top of the truck, working it down, streaking it down. Keep your strokes vertical in the final stage. You can kind of smear it around a little bit like this as you're first applying it, but just make sure to go back over it and put the vertical strokes on it. That way everything looks natural and it looks like actual rain streaking and stuff like that, like real rust. So put a little bit in the step wells, but not too much. Again, very simple on this. I'm not going too crazy. Tuck a little bit in on this fuel tank, just right up, kind of on the defined kick-up spray lines between the tank. Again, I don't spend too much time on this, just put a little bit where it's needed. The top of the tank, of course, another area where you'll always see this kind of build up as the grime gets kind of tucked into these details. So I'm not going to go too crazy. It's not too bad on the model. I'm going to kind of try to wipe a little bit off there. But I just want that residual little bit of kind of that dust effect on top of the tank, but not too much. So we're working on this part of the tank here. Just the top of it, being careful not to bust off my fuel tank parts there. I don't want to have to replace anything at this point. Put a little bit at the corners of the tank. And then just kind of scruff it up a little bit. just randomly here and there. I just like to go across real fast, get it tucked in those details, and then put the streak in it, just like that. Same thing on the body of the tank, just a little bit streaked down, just so you get those rain streaks. And then on the lead truck here, same thing, same application. Oops. Trying to kind of prop this model up just a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. I don't use those foam cradles that everybody talks about either, just because after I put this much detail on the model, I don't like them because of the idea of them, they can take off little parts and stuff, which I've seen them do before. And since I put a lot of fine little details, and a lot of my weathering at this point isn't sealed up, it'll rub off, like these chocks and everything, I don't put it in the foam. I just, bare bones, basically just hold it up, straightforward. I'm pretty simple with that. But, I mean, if you have one, you can use it. But I just find that they will sometimes take off some of the details, and they can sometimes remove some of your weathering effects too, which is extremely pain. It's a real pain anyway. I'm gonna put a little bit up on these battery box doors while I'm over here. I'm gonna kind of streak it down a little bit, but just in the right in the panel seams, where again that more of that concentrated grime is going to be, and then just kind of streak it down like that. That way I can kind of, I know again it's really hard to see there, but if you look closely you can kind of see those very microscopically fine streaks. What looks like real rain taking some of that grime out of all these cracks and crevices and streaking it down. That's what that does. It's a great little effect. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back and I'm going to add some white dusting to these with my aim powder. I'm going to go over these. Let me see if I have the right brush here. Kind of switching gears, I didn't show this brush originally, but this is my fan brush, my large fan brush. I'll use this to kind of help guide some of this powder over, but I just basically take my white powder, I'll take it in my little container cap here, remove most of it from the brush, but still load the bristles up pretty well. Get enough in there, take the excess off, and then I transfer it to the model, like this. But you can see how it'll quickly overpower anything, so you really got to kind of go easy on it. You can see I only put it right at the top of the truck again, and I'm streaking it down. This is very important. Make sure all the streaks are vertical. Very important. But this is representing some of the road dust and everything like that. Kind of tuck it up on the sill a little bit, just blotching it on. I can use a smaller brush for this too, but this one will work for the moment. But just have those random little highlighted spots like that. And again, if I kind of zoom in on this, you guys can see, if I can get it to focus, there we go. You guys can see those fine streaks. That's what we're going for here. Carefully here. There we go. Alright. Now what I'm going to do, and I'm only going to be doing this one truck in this video clip here, just to give you guys the idea of what I'm going to do with all these trucks. I'm going to take some black now with a micro brush, and I usually hit these bearings up a little bit. Since they're exposed, they get kind of greasy, and I like to just kind of randomly blotch some of that grease on around the journal, just putting it on here and there like this. Just kind of build it up. Again, it's not crazy. I'm not going, you know, extremely detailed with this, but just enough that you get those subtle little changes with the grease and everything. I'm just kind of spreading that around a little bit. Once I've applied it with everything on there, I'll fan it out with my fanning brush. Just take off some of the extra chalk, some of the extra powder, leaving only what I need. because I don't want all that extra chalk on there because it'll get on the wheels. It makes them a little harder to clean. I will clean these wheels later, obviously, but you know, just so that there's not more grime than necessary when I do that process, it definitely helps. But that's basically the application for the trucks. You guys can see how good those look. And again, I mean, you can really go into detail with these things. I've seen some people do amazing details with powders on the trucks. You can take this as far or as light as you want it, depending on prototype photos. Again, however you really want to go about applying all the grime and stuff. You know, for the prototype photo, this is my method. I use this on all my locomotives. I'll sometimes go back and add little rust streaks with different colors. I'll mix other little grime pigments in and stuff like that. I might put oil washes on these sometimes, depending if there's grease on the prototype. Again, it just depends on the prototype. But that's my truck method here real quick. And then again, I've covered this side of the fuel tank. It's pretty simple. I'll go back and add some fuel streaks to the fuel tank here in a sec, and we'll come back in the next clip showing you guys some of the walkway weathering and the grill weathering and some other little details.